Nintendo is a company of many things, revolutionizing the way we play games, creating high-quality and memorable gaming experiences, constantly taking down fan-created content no matter what type of content it is.
I drew me a Mario.
It's a practice that Nintendo has done for a while now, but why is that? Well, technically, Nintendo is allowed to take down whatever uses their character's likeness, whether that's Mario, Zelda, Metroid, Steven. You know, they really gotta make a new Steven game. They own these characters that they've created, but they really like to stretch and abuse the legal system when it comes to, well, this.
They like to claim it's illegal a lot of the time, when in reality, fair use laws outside of Japan just exist.
Japan has crazy copyright laws, so let's say you're making fan content and that gets taken down because Nintendo doesn't want it touching the eyes of the children.
The only way to really fight it is to do a whole legal battle with another country.
And they have realized this. I feel like every year there's a new type of fuckery that Nintendo partakes in. A few months ago, they went after Dolphin, a well-known Wii/GameCube emulator, and that thing's been around for years. If you don't know, emulation involves taking games that were made for one console and making them run on another console, mainly PC. Nintendo absolutely hates that. They want their games to be played the way they made them, on their own hardware with their own software. So it's no surprise that earlier this year, they went after the most popular Switch emulator, and they won.
That really shocked everyone, as emulation has always fell under fair use. But in recent years, there seems to be an effort, mainly from Nintendo, to fight that. These emulators get taken down due to use of copyrighted material within their creation. A lot of code used to compile these emulators are often copied from the actual hardware that runs these games.
That makes it so Nintendo is sadly in the right when it comes to these emulator takedowns. The creators of Yuzu, the Switch emulator in question, were taking donations, and Nintendo found copyrighted material in their code. So basically, they were profiting off of someone else's work. And that was the nail in the coffin for the Switch emulator. But did they really have to take down the 3DS emulator too? I understand that Yuzu unintentionally created massive piracy issues. Games for the Switch were being leaked and dumped on the internet, sometimes a week in advance of actual release. Since the emulator exists, that gave incentive for people just to download the game and not buy it, creating a market for piracy. Now, this solely is not Yuzu's fault. The creation of the emulator does not equate to piracy. It more so acts as preservation. But the Switch is still being sold in stores. It's on the market. There's nothing to preserve when we can still access it. So it makes the piracy argument go more to Nintendo's favor and makes sense as to why they'd want it shut down since they still support it like that. But the 3DS gets more support than my own children.
This is why Nintendo is seen as not reasonable, because they often make efforts to hinder the preservation of games and gaming history. At the moment, getting a 3DS alone will have you spend around $90 to $120, and that's if it comes with anything else but just the console. And good luck trying to get anything to work on this thing, since the online is now shut down. If you wanted to officially play any of these games on a different device, you just can't. That's beautiful, isn't it?
So having an emulator with legally obtainable ROMs is a great way to preserve these games in this part of gaming history. However, it's not about what's actually legal, it's about what they think is legal. Oftentimes, they use words like illegal copy of games when describing why they do something like this. During a time in which we were all inside due to syphilis, I think that's what was the virus going around, there was an online Smash Melee tournament being held as a way to get people together and not let syphilis bring us down. If you don't know, Smash Melee is a game on the GameCube with no online version implemented into it. So because of that, many people had to use a PC version of the game with Wi-Fi online modded into it. Do you know what Nintendo did?
They fully supported the game and all the players, and actually gave some prize money, making the tournament official. This was one of the only times a company like this worked with its modders and players to create an enjoyable experience during those trying times. Wait, what's this? So they're suing me for spreading misinformation.
This was just a slap in the face to many people's hard work and effort, and they justified it by saying it was an illegal copy of the game. I bought this from you! Everyone who was participating owned the game physically. How they got the ROM was up to them, but it was their ROM to do whatever they want with. There was nothing illegal about this tournament, as owning the game was required to enter. Nintendo probably meant that the game being modified was illegal. However, modification to games is not illegal.
Game modding has been a thing since the days of the Game Genie, and even back then in the 80s, courts agreed that this was not illegal. So Nintendo can't legally take down mods for games. They can try and know that most people won't fight back, and most of the time when they do go after someone, there's a fault in the practice of the modder or the consumer that makes Nintendo win. So they go on this power-hungry trip, and it leads to really disrespecting the fans of their franchises.
For example, Garry's mod. For almost 20 years, years, Garry's Mod has been a very community-driven game. It utilizes the Steam Workshop, a place where users can submit their own user-created content to be used within the game. A popular type of user-generated content for Garry's Mod are the ragdolls. You kind of just toss them around everywhere and you do whatever you want with them. And there's a lot of Nintendo content put on the workshop as people love these characters and just like to play around with them. Yeah, guess what Nintendo did?
They said that Garry's Mod would be an exception, as they realized the community has worked hard to get these models to work within the game. They respect the fact that players want to play as their favorite characters in a game where you can do whatever you want, as this has been the way for over 20 years. What was that? My lawyer has advised me to shut up.
So there's some speculation right now that this might not be real, but stuff is being taken down from the workshop, so I'm gonna talk about it as if it is real. 20 years of content now being taken away. This isn't even just model dumps. This is fan-made creations that use even the smallest amount of assets. Maps to play around in, creations other people made, and a lot of it made with love and care and respect for these properties and series. But that doesn't matter! It's my IP to sit on and do nothing with! It really begs the question of why now of all times. You don't just have something sit for 20 years and not have it brought up to your attention when it involves your IPs. They waited for this moment, and for what reason?
That is still left to be determined. Nintendo isn't a company that just does something. They have a reason, and when they do something they know will piss fans off, they try to sweep it under the rug with a Nintendo Direct or something.
Offset your shitty behavior with the hype. It's sure to win back the fans. This happened in a way when they took down the popular fan game another Metroid 2 remake. This was a reimagining of the Game Boy game Metroid Samus Return, and by reimagining, I mean they just made a new game. Do these two even look remotely similar? And it was done beautifully. And guess what? Nintendo took it down like a week after it was released. They then announced their own remake, so it's speculated that they didn't want this fan game to compete with their own game. What are they, fucking dumb? These are two completely different things. You mean to tell me that theirs can't exist because yours has to exist? Give me a break. This was also during the time they were taking down a lot of fan games in general, and it cultivated this environment of just not talking about things that Nintendo will probably, no, inevitably take down.
There are times where I am told of alternatives to things like the eShop shutting down or the Wi-Fi not working, but I can't bring that up when I talk about them online. There's a fear that it can lead to the takedown of these alternative methods. And that sucks. Nintendo has seemingly bullied everyone into submission. Don't make your fan games. Don't mod your games. Don't even dare talk about it, because we will go after it. But what about the things they can't go after? There has to be something that fans have done that Nintendo can't entirely touch. Where the f did this TV come from?
Remember that one time I talked about the Super Mario 64 PC port? If not, you should check it out. I went to court and everything for it. But the Mario PC port is not an emulation. It's not a decompilation. It didn't even use any of the code from the massive leak that happened during the same time. This was reverse engineered, meaning someone painstakingly made their own code to make their very own Mario 64 that just happens to run on PC. Now, for a little bit, Nintendo did go after this because assets that were used here were made by Nintendo. But you can compile this game now without having any of Nintendo's assets. It makes it almost impossible for Nintendo to take it down. And guess what? There's a Zelda Ocarina of Time version now. It shows that no matter what, the fans will prevail and will continue to make their own versions of games, or mods of older games, or content for other games, because damn it, that is what the gaming community is all about.
These games inspire us. For some, it inspires to talk about this stuff and get the word out there. It inspires others to get into creation and learning how to make fun games. And for others, it inspires a push for a change, to be allowed to be free with the content we are given and make it our own. So maybe, just maybe, we can see a day where all these things Nintendo tries to suppress, they accept it with open arms, creating a relationship between community and company. Gonna happen!
Here are some of the terrible practices Nintendo has done over the years. Yes, these are real. The Creator Program, in which any video online that uses Nintendo copyright would have to be put under this program, and they take most of your revenue. Overpricing games, selling ports and remasters for $60, when in reality they should be $40 or lower. Updating older dead consoles to stop people from modding the systems that they don't even support anymore. Shutting down entire tournaments over games having modifications to them. Denying the existence of Joy-Con drift. And suing a man that they stalked winning, and then having him give a percentage of their paycheck to the company for the rest of his life.
And you want to know what's really baffling? There are people who are going to see what I am saying and say that Nintendo has every right to do so. They'll defend the company that is downright vindictive against their own fans. What's next? We're gonna start apologizing to people who punch us in the face? Because if that's the case, I'm owed like 10 apologies.
Call them whatever you want, but I'm not gonna sit here and make fun of people like that. I don't think people understand that you can like something and still criticize it. You can love something and really hate most parts of it. It's not all black and white, and no, the Pokemon games don't count. The people who are heavily against emulation are people who think emulation is just piracy, or simply they're a purist who think games have to be played on their original hardware. That's fine. You can have that opinion, but to defend the actions from a company that are so anti-consumer, that are so against you, is something that I'll never understand.
I'm a huge fan of Nintendo. I love their games. They're the only gaming company I still follow up with, but I don't entirely like their business practices. They really hate their fans, you know, the ones who are willing to create and do more. They're just seen as a threat, and even if you don't do anything, you're not safe from Nintendo's wrath. It's only ever really going to get worse, and I feel like there's gonna come a time where Nintendo either gets into legal trouble due to their abuse of power, or people will just stop buying their games because, well, they had enough. Now, if you don't mind, I gotta get to a court case that I may or may not be late to. So, because I didn't credit Nintendo in my drawing, for the use of their character, I didn't win, essentially. And so I'm not allowed near anything that Nintendo owns or anything that they made. Ironically enough, they bought my house and everything that I owned, so I'm stuck in this abandoned backyard until I get back on my feet. But you know, they're in their right to do this.